Hi everyone. How are you doing today? For this quick guide we'll take a look at one of Pokemon Unite's weirdest looking Pokemon. And I'm really surprised it was already introduced into the game. Today we'll talk about Buzzwole. Buzzwole is an all-rounder with an amazing early game that can deal a ton of damage when you get close to your enemies. This Pokemon fights really well against single targets, dealing most of his damage around a single enemy at a time. It also is really good at throwing enemies around, making them unable to act. You can easily take down any attacker. But don't jump headfirst into team fights by yourself, since your moves have long animations and you're not that tanky. When it comes to moving around, he has a really hard time reaching his opponents, and will struggle a lot against unstoppable enemies. A Safeguard Blissey will probably make you want to take a break on this game after the match. With that said, let's check out Buzzwole's moves and see how he plays out. Let's start with the basic attacks. Your boosted attack will punch the enemy twice, dealing a good amount of damage and restoring some health. Did you notice that red bar? Every time you hit a Pokemon, this gauge will increase. This bar is consumed to make some of your moves more powerful. Also, when you KO an opponent, you will get an attack speed and movement speed buff for a short time. Your first move will be either Mega Punch or Fell Stinger. You'll get the other one on level 3. Mega Punch makes you jump to a direction. It's important to note that you can't control the distance, only the direction. When you land, you will damage to that area and will increase your muscle gauge. That bar, depending on how many Pokemon you hit with the move. It's really important to be able to fill your gauge quickly, so this move is one more source to fill it while also getting you right to your enemies. Next we have Fell Stinger. It will consume your entire muscle gauge and will deal damage in the designated direction. The damage will increase based on how much of your bar was consumed. If you KO the opponent with this move, you'll get some health back. The damage difference between using this move with the whole bar and the empty muscle gauge is noticeable. You'll see that this happens on some other of Buzzwole's moves. At the earlier stages of the match, this is probably the most damaging early move in the game with a full muscle gauge, so it's a great tool to secure farm and can KO your opponents out of nowhere. When you reach level 5, you get to choose between Leech Life or Super Power. Both of these moves will also consume your muscle gauge when used. Leech Life makes you grab a target and hold it in place. You will deal damage and restore health during this move. The amount of time the enemy is restrained will increase based on how much of your muscle gauge. Your enemy can escape from this move by using their eject button. You'll also release your target if you get stunned. And again, the difference between the full and empty gauge is huge. Leech Life Plus makes so every hit deals more damage than the last. So the longer the move's duration, the higher this bonus will be. And here is where we start to have problems with unstoppable Pokemons. Although you still keep this move's damage and healing, you won't be able to hold your targets in place. Your other option is Super Power. It makes you grab a Pokemon in the designated direction, then you slam that target on the ground, dealing damage to it and a small area around it. This move also grants you a shield, and both the shield and the damage will increase based on how much of your muscle gauge was spent. When this move upgrades, its cooldown will reset when you completely fill your muscle gauge, so you can use it once, then attack enemies to fill it again. After that, Super Power will be available once more, regardless of the cooldown timer. Here's where the unstoppable problem reaches its peak. This move is not cancelled and keeps the damage like the last one. In this case you'll do the jump animation by yourself and will deal damage when you hit the floor. This slam is so hard to aim, so keep an eye out for enemies that can dodge this move so you can have a better chance to hit. Both of these moves received their upgrades at level 11. At level 7 you can choose between Lunge or Smackdown. Both of these moves help filling you muscle gauge. Lunge works like Mega Punch. You jump into a fixed distance, you can only choose your direction. But this time, when you use this move, You also receive a attack speed increase for a short time. This move has 2 charges and the cooldown between each one is 1 second. But the cooldown to get a charge back is longer. Your muscle gauge will increase by 1 increment for each Pokemon hit with this attack. When this move upgrades, you'll also get an attack increase. The more enemies you hit, the higher this bonus will be. Smackdown makes you punch a Pokemon into the air towards a designated direction. While your target is airborne, you can activate this move again to go right to its current position and throw it to the ground, dealing damage in that area. If you don't use this follow-up, the Pokemon will deal damage in the area it lands. The damage is the same with or without the follow-up, so you can choose if you want to get close to your enemy again or not. And again, your muscle gauge will fill based on how many opposing Pokemon you hit with this move. The upgraded move makes the area at the end of this move larger, as well as increasing how much of the muscle gauge it fills. As you can see, the unstoppable problem also applies here, since you only do the punch and nothing will happen afterward. And a quick tip. You can do some crazy stuff using eject button. Both moves receive their upgrades at level 13. And now at level 9 Buzzwole get his Unite move. It makes you fly, dealing damage to every enemy around you. Then you target the opposing player with the lowest percentage of HP and hit it once more, dealing more damage based on its missing HP. So this move is great at finishing of one specific target at fights. Just be aware that it's based on the percentage. So if a defender is at 41% health and one attacker is at 45%, you will target the defender, regardless of the total amount of HP left. Now, let's take a look at some possible item and emblem choices. First, for the held items. There are only 2 options I would recommend. Those are eject button, to give you more range from time to time, and X speed, so you can chase your targets or run away. I tried a couple of games with full heal, but it did almost nothing. So yeah, Buzzwole don't get a lot out of this one. Now for the held items. As always, here's the tier list. For my best choices I picked Razor Claw and Focus Band. Razor Claw give you a good amount of extra damage and many times is what you need in order to one-shot weaker targets. Focus Band is just a great item that will help you survive. I would also place Attack Weight here, but Altawag Buzzwole can get a lot out of this item. Stacking isn't the most comfortable way to spend your early game, especially if you're in the central area. So it isn't in my best choices, not because of its value, it's just not the item I would suggest for a new Pokemon Unite player since it can be tricky to adapt to the stacking playstyle. But once you understand what you're doing, it definitely is one of the best items here. Also, some other good choices are Weakens Policy, to give you some extra attack for more damage with your moves at the cost of being hit. Muscle Band and Rapid Fire Scarf. These items are good choices if you don't want to use attack weight. They will make your basic attacks very strong in the early game. Their value will decrease as the match go on since it's harder to stay alive attacking that long. And lastly, Energy Amplifier, since your Unite deals a ton of damage already, this will make sure you will take someone down. Other weaker choices are Buddy Barrier, to help you and your teammates survive. Ayo's Cookie, another stacking item. And Float Stone, so you can walk around the map faster. I wouldn't bother with any other options. And lastly, for the emblems. I would recommend in this case prioritize maxing out your attack stat with brown emblems, while also increasing your health with white emblems. There aren't many other options for Buzzwole here, but you'll be fine with attack and health. And that is our quick guide. Buzzwole seems really good with the recent buffs, so I highly recommend trying it out if you haven't already. I hope this guide helped you to better understand this Pokemon. And if you want to see more Pokemon Unite content, please consider subscribing. I would really appreciate having you around. Thank you so much for watching. And until next time.